Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Kerbal Space Program. Today we're going to be launching a mission to Duna, one of the most exciting planets in the Kerbal system. As you can see, we've already built our rocket and our lander, and we've spent countless hours testing and fine-tuning every detail. We're ready to go. First, we'll launch our rocket from the launch pad and get it into orbit. We'll use a series of carefully calculated maneuvers to get our rocket on a trajectory towards Duna, making sure we use the least amount of fuel possible. Once we arrive at Duna, we'll need to slow down and land our lander safely on the surface. We've equipped the lander with everything we need to explore the planet, including scientific instruments and plenty of snacks for the Kerbals. But the real challenge will be getting back home. We'll need to take off from Duna's surface, rendezvous with our orbiting spacecraft, and then make the journey back to Kerbin. It's going to be a long and challenging mission, but we're ready for it. We've got the best Kerbals on board, the most advanced technology, and the most well-planned mission possible. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride as we take on the challenge of exploring one of the most fascinating planets in the Kerbal system. Let's go to Duna. And guys, I didn't write any of that. For the past minute or so, I was reading a script generated by the artificial intelligence ChatGPT. If you're not familiar, it's an artificial intelligence that anyone can use. It's free for the general public, and you can see me asking it to write the script. I haven't changed the playback of this footage. The speed at which this thing was able to assimilate my question and then create the script, it was like faster than it took me to just write the question because I'm such a slow typer. I was actually inspired to make this video based on an interesting Reddit post by Reddit user Outer Space Simon, who posted saying that you can let this AI generate missions for you. And I thought, oh, that's a really cool idea, because I think and I am assuming many of you, sometimes get a little bit of KSP block where you can't really think of what to do or what kind of mission to do. I've been playing this game for years now, so when I have to think of a mission, it can sometimes take me a fair old while to think of a good idea, but now I have an AI to do that for me. So I tried asking a couple of questions. It was all fairly simple stuff like just go to orbit and back. So then I asked it, can you give me a difficult multiple launch mission to do in Kerbal Space Program? And this is what it came out with. The mission: establish a crewed research station in the Jool system using multiple launches. Your goal is to establish a crewed research station in orbit around one of Jool's moons, either Laythe, Vall, or Tylo. The station must be equipped with science experiments and sufficient supplies to sustain the crew for an extended period of time. The requirements: you must use multiple launches to assemble the station in orbit. Each launch will carry a component of the station, like a module, science experiment, or supplies. The station must have at least one docking port to accommodate future visits by spacecrafts. The crew must be able to carry out scientific research on the moon the station is orbiting, using the experiments that you deliver. The mission must be completed within a reasonable time frame. You can set your own deadline, but a good goal is to complete the mission within 1 year of game time. All launches must be conducted using in-game technology and parts. No mods or cheats are allowed. It also gives us some tips. One of them is to consider sending an unmanned probe ahead of the crewed station to scout out the area and collect scientific data before the crew arrives. And that is what I'm currently building on screen. We're going to send a probe ahead of our Jool station launch. And I think this is a pretty good mission, actually. I think it did a decent job. The only thing it kind of got a bit wrong is that it recommended doing the whole thing in under a year of game time, but it takes like 3 years to get to Jool, so we're not going to be able to fulfill that requirement. But I'll try and go as quick as we can. We won't waste time doing gravity assists with Tylo or Laythe. We'll just go straight to our destination. Which, where are we going? I thought we could go to Vall, because I've done life on Laythe to death at this point. Is that a pun kind of wordplay? Because life on Laythe to death, whatever. I've done space stations around Laythe before, and surface bases on Laythe before, and I've done a surface base on Tylo as well, but I've never really done many dedicated missions to Vall. Like, the first ever Blunderbirds video was to Vall, and I think I've done like one other video where I went to Vall, and like the when I did my Volcano rover video. And that's it. I don't think I've ever been to Vall as a dedicated mission outside of, say, Jool 5 challenges and stuff. So this is a good opportunity, because I think Vall is a bit of an underrated destination in the Jool system, right? Because obviously you got the big ones, Tylo and Laythe, both really cool destinations in their own right. But then you got Pol and Bop, which are quite, they're very forgiving places to visit. Bop has one of the coolest Easter eggs in the game on it, the dead Kraken, and they're a really good place for mining ships to visit because they've got low gravity, so they make a great places to refuel. So Vall is sort of the awkward outlier middle child, really, of the Jool system. So let's go and show Vall some love. Now, I am aware with the level of complexity with this mission, it's going to be a long old video. I think it's going to be like over 50 minutes or near enough. Where am I? I've kind of laid out a rough draft on my video editing timeline. Yeah, it's about just after the 50-minute mark is when it ends. So that might change as I kind of trim stuff down as I commentate over the footage, but that's the situation. So yeah, it's going to be a long old video, but I hope you enjoy the ride. I mean, it's not going to be... hopefully it shouldn't be too boring, right? Because there's lots of little phases. We've got to fly the probe to Vall first of all. Then we've got to go back and build all the station components, launch them all, and then place them all together in low Kerbin orbit, and then assemble the big colony ship that then takes the whole thing over to Vall. And it's gonna be a fun old time. I want to draw your attention to this though. I had that bug where the game crashes to desktop when trying to make a maneuver node at the Jool system. Ready? And there we are, it crashed to desktop. So this has been really annoying me, this bug, for a long time, and I found out how to fix it. I saw a forum or a Reddit post and someone posted the solution. I forgot to write their name down and now I can't find the post, so I don't know who to credit here. Basically, go into your graphic settings and untick always show closest approach for target. If you untick that, it fixes the Jool desktop crash. I don't know why. I guess because there's loads of conflicting orbits with Jool. There's obviously the 5 moons, there's Jool itself. More often than not, your trajectory ends up being a sort of semi-gravity assist to get a second Jool encounter, so there's that as well, and the game just freaks out, doesn't know what to do, and crashes. I'm not a programmer, I don't know, so maybe I could ask AI, but that's for another day, I think. But now you guys know, if you're having this glitch, it's frustrating because it doesn't always happen. It's only about, maybe I want to say 40% of the time when I do Jool missions this happens. So I don't know what the trigger is and what the circumstances are in order to create the bug, but it happened and that's how you fix it. And here we are. I kind of started off on a tangent earlier and didn't finish it, but I said that this is going to be a long old video because there's so many different components. So a lot of the footage is going to be sped up to be quite fast. So do let me know if this was way too fast to assimilate, and I'll try and slow it down a little bit for future videos, but I don't like it when my videos are more than an hour because then it feels like it's too much, right? So I try and tone it down a little bit. But here we are, arriving at Vall. Our scout probe is here, thus fulfilling one of the requests from the AI, which was to send an unmanned probe ahead of the crewed station to scout out the area and collect scientific data before the crew arrives. Wasn't sure what scientific data to gather, so I sent some mystery goo thinking that might be... The mystery goo is a simulation of organic life, so we can see what sort of steps we'd need to take for building the life support modules on the station. I always did the magnetometer boom because that's a cool looking thing, but I actually did learn something. Vall was really bright and glowy, so I knew that I needed to turn down my ambient light boost settings. So sending the unmanned probe ahead of the crewed space station actually served a benefit for this mission. So thank you, AI. I wouldn't have sent the probe if I just designed this mission. I would have just said, let's just go. So it was very helpful. Thank you, ChatGPT. Wait, not GDP. GPT, isn't it? Yeah. I'm going to be out of a job soon, it would seem. Now I'm just going to build the station. So one of the requirements from the AI was that the crew must be able to carry out scientific research on the moon the station is orbiting, using the experiments that we deliver. Meaning, my interpretation is that we need a lander, right? How else would you interpret that? I did make a bit of a blunder with this, though. I stuck a Science Junior in one of the side doors of that command pod, but then I thought, the clipping there is a bit egregious, so I then put a Science Junior elsewhere on the lander, on one of those, like, quad attachment points, but I forgot to remove the Science Junior from the... So we have 2 Science Juniors in the lander, basically. So we'll end up removing one using EVA construction, but that means that now the lander has a bit more delta V than it really needs. But whatever, it's nice to have a bit of wiggle room, isn't it? So the AI mission, the mission statement was that you have to assemble the space station using multiple launches. It doesn't say that each launch has to separately go to Jool, so I'm going to just construct the station in low Kerbin orbit. Well, I'm going to construct it in a way in which it can be moved easily. So I'm going to dock all the components together in a big long line and then put a nuclear tug at one end, and then we can reassemble it all in Vall orbit, which had its challenges. and I'll cover those challenges in just a second when it gets to that part in the build process. Right now, I'm just going to construct the entire thing in the spaceplane hangar, just so I can visually see how it's all going to come together, and then we'll split everything up into the individual modules, construct the rocket for each individual module, and then launch each rocket for each module, and then we can just put everything together in low carbon orbit, like I just described. Don't know why I felt the need to repeat all of that, really. So what I'm building right now is the main habitation module. We've got a couple of gravity rings. The reason I've got 2 rings is because A, it looks very cool to have more than one rotating ring, and also having a rotating ring can kind of mess up the space station's orientation. It kind of acts like a big SAS wheel almost. So having another ring spinning in an opposite direction cancels all of that out. It makes the station more stable. So it's actually beneficial to have an even number of gravity rings spinning in opposite directions. Blink and you miss it, but I've built the second module, which is basically a big orange fuel tank with a little engineering module at one end. In terms of the fuel level in the orange tank, though, basically I took the total amount of liquid fuel and oxidizer in my lander, multiplied it by 5, and then set the liquid fuel and oxidizer levels of that orange tank to be that value. So the orange tank isn't completely full. It has exactly enough fuel to fill up the lander 5 times. It's nearly full. I can't remember the exact value. I mean, you'll probably see it at some point when I actually use it to refuel the lander. I think it has 2,700 units of liquid fuel, and its total normal value at full capacity is like just under 3,000. So there really isn't that. It's not drained to a huge extent. I've built the other module now, which is basically our lander with another little engineering pod airlock thing attached to it. And now I'm building the Deep Space Nuclear Transport Tug, which is a single monolithic unit because I didn't want to leave any debris in deep space. So this is going to get us all the way from low Kerbin orbit all the way to Vall orbit without the need for any gravity assists and without the need to drop any stages or empty fuel tanks or anything like that. So the station, as you can see, has been pretty much fully built now. We're ready to begin launching it in all of its individual modules and assembling it in low Kerbin orbit. But first things first, we're going to fast forward in time now to a Jool transfer window. So a Jool transfer window, I'm going to eyeball it as good practice since we have to eyeball it for Kerbal Space Program 2 and the fact that I always eyeball it anyway. But basically, if you draw a line from Kerbin to the sun to Jool, the angle that line forms at the sun should be about 100 degrees. So basically not just a little bit more than 90 degrees. So that looks about right there, doesn't it? Jool has got a gigantic gravity well, so it's not like the end of the world if you don't get it spot on. That's all I have to say about that. Let's begin constructing the first rocket, which is the rocket for the Alpha module. The Alpha module is the biggest by sheer size. The most massive is the nuclear tug, but the Alpha module is the biggest and the clunkiest one. So let's just get this one out of the way first, because this is going to be the hardest one to dock because it's such a fiddly and wobbly structure. I did make the minor modification of adding a docking port on that front cupola module, which I know is a cardinal sin because you want that module to be not have anything attached to it, basically, so you can look out and get a nice panoramic view. That docking port is only going to be there temporarily, just so that, as I kind of described earlier, we're going to build this thing in low Kerbin orbit in just one giant line to make it easier to push, which means we need a docking port at the front. But once we've got the space station reassembled in Vall orbit, I'll put an engineer Kerbal out on EVA and remove that docking port so we get a nice unobstructed view out of that big window on that module. But there you go, that's pretty much the rocket done, just adding a few struts and adding a probe core to the upper stage just so that we don't leave it stuck in orbit. And here we are crossfading across to the launch site. Let's launch. Still fun, but I think I've been a little bit spoiled now by the launch sequence of Kerbal Space Program 2. One of my favorite things about that game. But on the flip side, my game is not running at 10 FPS, so, there are upsides and downsides to Kerbal Space Program 1 and 2. But anyway, I'm going to speed the footage up now to get the video moving along. By the way, what do you think of these clouds, eh? I've got the volumetric clouds mod installed once again. It's on. I don't think it's available publicly yet. You've got to download it from BlackRack's Patreon page. Just Google KSP volumetric clouds BlackRack Patreon and it will come up. I have also my visual mods are a bit of a mess because I kept on updating them and then adding them and then changing some of them, and they ended up being all out of sync with each other. So I just wiped my KSP install and then reinstalled all of my mods. So all my visual mods, all my gameplay mods, and now it's looking better. I think my game always looks a bit glowier than yours might because I add a little bit of color correction in post just to sharpen up the graphics and make some of the colors pop a bit more. But yeah, I think it's looking pretty good now. But yeah, this the first stage had a lot of longevity in it. I'm like, oh, it's still got fuel, has it? I didn't test this rocket. It may come as no surprise to hear. This was all the first. I was doing this. I filmed this all yesterday. And it was getting quite late, and I kind of wanted to finish filming the mission before dinner, or at the very least bedtime. I failed at both of these things. I ended up finishing filming the mission this morning. I think I finished playing KSP at like 10:30 p.m. yesterday, and then I had to make dinner. And I thought, oh, you know what? I'll treat myself to a takeaway. I'll just get like a kebab shop pizza or something. So I ordered it on like Uber Eats, and it said it's going to be here in 45 minutes. I'm like, okay, that's going to be late. 11:15 is very late, but yeah, I've already accepted this now. I've already got hyped for this, so let's just do it. And then at 11:10, so 10 past 11, I then just got a notification from Uber saying the restaurant has cancelled your order. And I was like, oh no. So then I had to like cobble something together from my fridge, which was there wasn't very much there. There was like you know when you have like a frozen pizza, and it's like not a very good one, so you just sort of banish it to the bottom of a freezer drawer in the freezer, right? And then it ends up getting like all frosty and horrible and dried out, and that's what I had. I'm like, this is literally the only thing I can make that's not going to take like an hour to cook. This is a 10-minute jobby, but this is like a really dingy old pizza that I probably bought like 2 years ago and just left in the bottom of the freezer. So I had that, and it was as disappointing as that description probably makes it out to be. It was a meat feast pizza as well. So maybe so it had like pepperoni and what else on it? Like minced meat, I think. It was so maybe it wasn't even safe to eat. Maybe I've like been diced with the devil eating that pizza. But I gotta eat, what can I say? And I also gotta launch this rocket that I did not talk about, but it's a fairly self-explanatory launch vehicle. Right, here we are on the launch pad. I'm in the map screen now, just setting the core module as my target, just letting it swing around the planet. When setting up a launch to rendezvous with something in low Kerbin orbit, I kind of wait for the target to be over the body of water that's to the west of the landmass that the KSC sits on. But yeah, let's launch. It's not as dramatic as the first rocket we flew, and obviously with that launch I said it's not as dramatic as it is in KSP 2. So all in all, a complete disappointment, this rocket. But I don't know, so it's fun. It's got 4 solid rocket boosters. I said boosters really weird, didn't I? Boosters. Yeah, because although the payload isn't very big, it's just the refueling module, the payload is quite heavy. It's a almost completely full orange fuel tank. So we kind of needed a pretty capable rocket, and I went with a Mark II, not Mark II, 2.5 meter diameter pieces, because that's just kind of the best. It gave me the best overall aesthetic proportions, I think. The bigger sizes, the rocket would be too short and stumpy. This, I feel like, is the sweet spot. But yeah, anyway, back to my disgusting dried up pizza. I'm gonna go to the shop, I think, after I've recorded this, and buy some like good frozen pizza, so I have emergency supplies for when kebab shops cancel my orders. I don't really get takeaway that often, to be fair. I got it recently because I've been pumping out a lot of content for you guys. Obviously, last week for me, I made I think it was 8 KSP videos in the end, right? I'm trying to think, because there was one every day, and then I made a couple of shorts, so there was 9 in fact. So there you are. So I was about to work quite hard there, and then this week, it's been pretty stressful. Well, not stressful, but like I've been working quite hard. I've made 2 KSP2 videos, and I've made this video, and obviously there was space this week on Monday. So that's 4. That's much more than what I normally do. Normally it's like 1 KSP video a week. So I'm really pushing for that content because I know I care about you guys, and also it's great that my channel's getting a lot more views. So I'm milking the moment where KSP2 is at peak hype, because I imagine the hype's gonna die down again fairly soon, because I think people are starting to get a bit sick of the bugs now. I posted on Twitter and my YouTube channel page. Go follow me on Twitter, by the way. I feel like I don't have that many followers on Twitter. Like, people who have smaller channels than me have massively more followers on Twitter, and I'm like, I don't know how do I just have no idea what I'm doing with Twitter, guys. I just like tweet memes and pictures and stuff, and then I don't really get any followers. So follow me on Twitter. There's a link in the description. It's @MattLowne. I post pictures of missions I'm working on and share hot takes with the Twitter community, who are always very understanding and receptive to all of my ideas. Anyway, that whole tangent came about because I posted on Twitter and my YouTube community tab, do you guys want me to just continue doing KSP2 exclusively, or would you like some KSP1 content thrown in here and there? Like, I think I haven't figured out the ratio yet, but it's probably going to be like 3-to-1 in terms of KSP2 content to KSP1 content. So, for every 3 KSP2 videos, I'll make a KSP1 video or something like that. But maybe I'll see how well this video does. If this video bombs and my KSP2 videos continue going crazy with the views, then I'll modify that. So this is kind of like a Pathfinder. It's the proverbial satellite that we sent to Vall initially to do a scout out. This is like, it rhymes. The AI knew. They know too much, guys. The AI knew and added that as a little metaphor for this whole video. Here we are, by the way, launching the final rocket, which it isn't making any noise. The sound bug has kicked in. So the rocket launches kind of got progressively more disappointing, didn't they? And in fact, actually, I tell a lie. There is one more launch coming after this one, and that's the really big rocket. Yes! The really big rocket where we launched the nuclear tug. And I'm pretty sure I did restart the game after this launch so I could get the sound back, because I knew you guys would want that sound on that rocket. Even though it all pales in comparison now that we're all used to the KSP2 launch sound effects. Well, those of us that can play the game. I sounded like I was being really facetious there. It's kind of... It does suck how demanding KSP2 is, because I know there are those people that really want to play it, but literally just can't. They literally cannot even. So yeah, I'll be there for you guys. You can watch my content, and I'll speed the footage up so that the frame rate is actually acceptable. I did an air launch video, which I think will have been published by the time you guys are watching this. I don't know when I'm going to publish it. I'm thinking maybe Friday, just after midday, like at 1 o'clock, but I haven't figured it out yet. But I made an air launch video, and literally playing that in real time took me ages because the frame rate was so bad. Because I think the things that tank the frame rate in KSP2 is like when there are multiple engines burning and they're pulling fuel from multiple different tanks that are attached radially and things. I think that's one of the big... there's loads of things that slow the game down. And even when you don't do all of this, the game still runs not very well. But, this does slow it down to a significant amount. So with this air launcher, I had 6 jet engines, and then I had a vector engine on the actual payload itself that was launched from the air launch platform, and it was all in all a very, very choppy experience. But interestingly, when the space plane separated from the air launch carrier, the frame rate improved hugely. Like, I was getting like 40 to 60 FPS, it felt like. I don't know if it was actually more like 25 FPS, but it felt like 60 in comparison to the really slow frame rate I was experiencing up until that point. Who knows? Anyway, back to the VAB for the final time for this mission. I mentioned earlier that, I was really struggling for time, hence why I needed to get a kebab shop pizza in the first place. Because I have been working a lot more recently on videos and stuff. And thanks, Chat, I keep wanting to say ChatGPT, like gross domestic product. What is it? Is it Chat? It's ChatGPT. What does that stand for? ChatGPT. I've still got the window open. I'm gonna ask the chat what it's called. Why is your name? No, what does ChatGPT stand for? An error has occurred. Brilliant. Let me just launch a new chat. This is great content for you guys. The video is like an hour, right? Oh, it's the website's completely down for me now. Maybe it's at peak times. No, it's 3:30 for me. So, school kids maybe? I don't know. Oh, we've launched! I just heard it on my headphones whilst I'm playing around in Google Chrome. Here we go. ChatGPT stands for Chat Generative Pre-Trained Transformer. It's a type of natural... Okay, yeah, I don't care how it works. I know it like... I've seen the Tom Scott video, so I know it like just predicts what the next word is going to be, but to me it's wizardry. Speaking of wizardry, BlackRack, creator of the volumetric clouds mod. Look at these. Are they prettier than the KSP2 clouds? I think they might be, They do look a bit weird from a distance, but considering this was all built as a mod by a single person, I'd say they're pretty darn impressive. And I'm actually going to look at the volumetric clouds on Laythe. In retrospect, I think Laythe might have been a better destination, because although I've done so many Laythe bases and all that at this point, we could see Laythe with the volumetric clouds, because the volumetric clouds are on Duna, Laythe, Jool, I think, as well, and obviously Kerbin. So it would have been nice to go Laythe. So what I'm going to do, we're not going to leave the nuclear tug attached to the space station, because that would look naff. So once the space station is all assembled, I'll send the nuclear tug to just go and crash into the oceans of Laythe, so that we can contaminate all of its waters with nuclear waste, and also check out the nice volumetric clouds on Laythe. But yeah, anyway, I guess the summary of all of that was thanks ChatGPT for making a really complex mission for me when I was already really busy anyway. I guess I did ask it to make a challenging mission that requires multiple launches, so it did do the thing I asked it to. But darn it, I still want something to blame, so I'm gonna blame it for my disgusting pizza. Thanks, AI. Everyone's worried about the future of AI and what the implications are. And to me, it's like, yeah, my dinner was ruined thanks to this really complicated mission that AI forced me to do, and I had no control whatsoever in it. So yeah, that's why I am this is the only reason that I'm personally very much against AI. I wish an AI had helped me design this rocket, though. I made a bit of a mistake here. You might have noticed I've been deorbiting all of my upper stages for all the modules we've launched so far, and I've been doing this by attaching probe cores and SAS and batteries to the stages so that they have power and control so that they can deorbit themselves. And I thought I did that for this one, right? Oh, it's cut to the... Oh, no, we've cut to the station. But good segue here, I guess, actually, because here I am getting rid of the upper stage for the Alpha module, freeing up that docking port to allow us to dock the nuclear tug to it. But it was the second stage of the rocket that launched the nuclear tug that I forgot to add a probe core. I added the reaction wheels and the batteries and all that, but I forgot to add a probe core, so we're going to be leaving some space junk in space, unfortunately. Sad times. But this is it. Here we are, docking the final thing to our station before we depart low Kerbin orbit. There we are. It's all ready to go. Now, I haven't realized this yet, but, well, earlier I mentioned it was getting a bit late on in the day when I was filming all of this, so I probably wasn't in the most sound of minds when I was cobbling all of this together, and I forgot to add any means of moving all the station parts around once we get to Vall orbit. Here is me currently realizing that I can't switch to that vessel over there because the game has it tagged as debris, because there's no probe core or command module on board. So that's what I'm currently doing on screen, trying to figure out why I can't switch to it. But yes, I forgot to add... Here we are. You can see the penny dropping there on that debris. Yes, there is no means of moving all the modules around. So that big orange fuel tank module, there's no probe core on it. There's no monopropellant thrusters or monopropellant, tanks. There's no burner engines. It's just a big, dumb, dead piece of debris, basically. So we're going to have to try and assemble this in low Vall orbit using, well, it was quite difficult, let me tell you. And for more ways than one, in ways that I won't spoil, but yeah, it was a challenging ordeal reassembling the station in low Vall orbit. But you know what? I think it kind of adds to the sense of satisfaction from pulling off a mission like this, succeeding even in the face of adversity. So our current thrust to weight ratio is very low because we only have, we've got 5 engines, but they're the nuclear engines, so they're very low thrust, and they themselves are very heavy, as is the rest of this craft, in case it wasn't obvious. It's a very heavy craft, so it's going to be very, very slow. So we're not going to do our burn to Jool in one go. We're going to do 3 burns at Kerbin periapsis. We're going to do 1 burn that's about 590 meters per second. I probably should have gone for more like 400 meters per second. You kind of want to split your burns up evenly, right? So that you're kind of using the same amount of delta V for each burn. So our first 2 burns are going to get us all the way to the edge of Kerbin's sphere of influence, but not actually leave Kerbin's sphere of influence. Takes about 1,000 meters per second of delta V to perform a maneuver like this. So you kind of want to have 450, 500 meters per second for each burn. I ended up having 600 for the first and then like 300 for the second, so it was not as efficient as it could have been, to be honest. So don't do that. I just forgot. I haven't done an interplanetary Kerbal Space Program mission for like Well, I did one this week, actually. That was KSP 2. And I'm just a bit I feel like I'm a bit rusty with my KSP skills. I don't know if it's like the jarringness, that's a word, isn't it? Of like moving from KSP 2 back to KSP 1 after playing KSP 2 so much, and then I'm just forgetting, making silly little mistakes, schoolboy errors. But it was fine. We have enough Delta V. We have more than enough Delta V in this rocket, actually. I'd sort of forgotten how much fuel you need for a Jool mission. I'm like, well, I know you can do a Tylo gravity assist, right? And that basically makes Jool capture free. And then we need to rendezvous for Vall. I can't remember how much Delta V we need. So let's just bring loads. And then we don't have to worry about doing a gravity assist or anything. We can just go straight to Vall. And hey, if we do run out of fuel, we can just do a gravity assist at Tylo and just save a bunch of Delta V there. And it'll all work out in the end. So that's just me spoiling now why I designed this mission the way I did. I feel like now I've done a Vall mission though, and I'm like, yeah, I remember how to play this game now. So going forward, if I carry on making KSP1 content to a regular extent, then I feel more confident, I feel better prepared to do more challenging mission. What did I even ask the AI? Challenging missions that involve multiple launches. But speaking of the AI again, this is actually great, you know, just asking it, hey, come up with a difficult mission for me to do for Kerbal Space Program, and it just spits to the end. You're like, oh yeah, that is a good thing that I could do that I didn't really think of, because this isn't really a mission that I would have just, well, I mean, I guess it is a fairly basic mission when you boil it down to its core ingredients, but just kind of the instructions and like the rules, and like it's a kind of a nice challenge. And then you guys, I showed the answer the bot gave me at the very beginning of this video, so you could go ahead and follow that if you want. Try and build your own version of this, but maybe we could do it at Laythe or Tylo, which were the other two destinations that the AI suggested, and you could post it to me on Twitter. So it brings this full circle back. Well, it's not really full circle because this was like halfway through the video I mentioned my Twitter. It's come full semicircle. Does that work? I don't know. You say, hey Matt, I did your mission. You can at me or just post it on my subreddit. It's reddit.com /r/Matt's subreddit. There you go. That's there's some places you can post it. I'm always hanging out on my subreddit, actually checking out the posts. There's only like 3 per week, so it's a fairly easy subreddit to stay on top of. But yeah, I was looking at some of the other comments on the post that inspired me, and one user, Face Deer, said that you can get quite high level with ChatGPT. So they asked it, hey, I'm playing a game of Kerbal Space Program. I'd like you to generate a series of missions to send my Kerbals on of increasing complexity that ends with the Kerbals landing on Elu. And the AI came up with 8 missions here. It was mission 1 was to launch a probe into orbit around Kerbin. 2, orbit the Mun. 3, land on the Mun. 4, orbit and land on Duna. 5, flyby of Jool. 6, land on Pol or Bop. 7, land on Tylo. And 8, land on Elu. The missions that you get in stock KSP career mode are like really not that inspiring, and they do have kind of a weird progression level. I guess the one flaw in that ChatGPT answer is that landing on Tylo comes before landing on Elu, when really a Tylo landing is the hardest thing to do in the game, aside from arbitrary challenges like Jool 5, obviously. Actually, I guess Eve returns are up there. It's either Eve return or Tylo landing. Those are kind of the 2 difficult missions, right? Tylo's the hardest celestial body to land on. Eve is the hardest to return from. And anyone in the comments, right, there's probably someone's down there now saying, oh, but what about Jool? What about the Sun? Those are harder to return from. Come here. Come closer. Come closer. Come close as you can physically get to your screen. All right, are you listening? No one thinks you're funny. You're not funny. Don't write that. Don't write that comment. Close it. Press close. Sit back and watch as we enter Vall's sphere of influence, which will be happening imminently. I've made a circularization burn. I mean, I didn't really talk about any of the flight, did I? What was I even talking about? Just talking about the wonders of AI, but I did do a mid-course correction burn. You guys have seen me go to Jool at this point, right? I've done so many Laythe videos, let alone the Jool system as a whole, which again I've done many. I've done Jool 5s. How many Jool 5 videos I've done? I think I've done 3, haven't I? And I've done a couple of grand tours, which include a Jool 5. Right, I think. Did my Grand Tour videos feature a Tylo landing, though? I don't think. Guys, I'm now thinking about it. I've never actually done a full Grand Tour of the Kerbal Space Program system. Like, I've done Grand Tours where one of my most proud accomplishments in this game was a Grand Tour with an SSTO that never needs to be refueled or anything. But that was just entering every planet's sphere of influence and every moon's sphere of influence, which I still think is quite impressive. Like, that's still quite a challenging thing. I needed to do loads of gravity assists. But yeah, I've never done a grand tour where I've landed on every single planet and moon. I've done ones with like SSTOs that have the mining stuff in them, but they can't do Tylo or Eve. So maybe that's an idea for a video at some point, is to do a full KSP grand tour where we land and return from every planet. We put flags and footprints on every planet and moon. And again, if you're there saying, well, what about Jool? No, I'm not telling you again, Steve. Don't write that comment. Anyway, we're now circularizing at Vall. I'm aiming for a orbital height of about 30 kilometers. So it was kind of a nice balance between nice and low to the surface, but also high enough that we're not going to be getting too close to the mountains and stuff. And Vall has volcanoes, right? So we don't want to have a volcano erupt and hit the station, so we want to be nice and clear of that. So 30 kilometers, I feel like, is a good sweet spot. Now comes the very challenging objective of reconfiguring this station into its final form. Now, it wasn't at this precise moment that I realized my mistake. I realized in low Kerbin orbit, right before I started doing all the burns that would take me to Jool, and I was like, oh, I reckon I can do this. It'll be fine. But then there was a bit of a challenge. So this part is okay. Moving the lander, in the little engineering module, that was pretty easy. The difficult one to do was the orange fuel tank, because I didn't want to use the lander, because here we're using such a minimal amount of fuel that it doesn't affect anything. But moving the big heavy orange tank would probably affect the lander's fuel reserves a bit too much, and would mean that we could potentially only do 5 landings as opposed to 6, which is the amount that we can currently do with the fuel levels of the orange tank and the fuel that's already in the lander. So instead, we're going to have to use the nuclear tug, which handles very poorly. It hasn't got any solar panels or RTGs, so luckily it's got batteries, but that electric charge will not recharge. So we have to kind of do all of this as quickly as possible, whilst also not having any monopropellant and having a very slow and lumbering craft. Thank goodness I put batteries on this thing. I almost didn't. I just put them there as kind of like it has a bit of interesting aesthetic, not realizing I would need to be doing this. The other issue I have, right, you can see which docking port this is going to be attaching to on that orange tank. It's the bit with the engineering bay. However, that is the docking port that I want to be attached to the station. Because can you guys see what I mean? If we take this tank as it is, and then dock it to the station using the last remaining docking port, then in order for Kerbals to get to that engineering bay that we're docking to, they will either need to transfer through the fuel tank, which is unrealistic, I don't want to do that, or go on an EVA, which is unrealistic, and I don't want to do that. So, we're going to have to dock like this. Then I'm going to time warp so that we're actually in the daylight side of the moon so I can see what I'm doing, because now what we're going to have to do is pull the orange tank away, get it clear of the station, then undock with it, thus leaving it as a dead floating piece of debris with no command or control or reaction control systems, and now it's just a floating dead weight. Then somehow maneuver the big lumbering, very slow to handle nuclear tug around the orange tank so it can dock to the other end of the module. And we've got to do all of this with no monopropellant, and again, this thing turns like a carousel that doesn't turn very quickly. Those two things. I've sped the footage up to 4 times faster than normal speed. Hopefully you can kind of get a sense of how slow this thing was to handle in real life. And obviously you can see the orange tank is now starting to spin, and I can't do anything to stop that. So I'm having to sort of like line up the nuclear tug so that it's pointing in a place where I think it'll be aligned with the orange tank's docking port. So I kind of went with this angle here. Thought, yeah, this looks like it should work. Let's try this. And is it gonna? Guys, I love magnets. Magnets are just the best, aren't they? So yes, thanks to the powerful magnets of the docking port, we got things to connect together. But of course, we're not out of the woods yet. This is obviously all against the clock, kind of, because our electric charge will not come back. With every single movement of this nuclear tug, we lose a lot of electric charge, because it unsurprisingly takes a lot of electric power to generate the necessary torque to turn such a heavy thing, especially with that big, heavy orange tank fuel module. And would you know, I've done it once again. Whilst I was turning to face the docking port, I smacked into the space station and sent everything out of alignment, so now I've made things even worse myself. And I was really worried that I would in fact run out of electric charge. So we're going to kind of use the station to help dock us. So I'm not going to use the engines of the lander. I'm actually going to use the Lowne lazy method of docking. So we set the control point for both vessels as the docking port, and then press auto SAS hold on to target, and then both ships should maintain alignment fairly easily. This doesn't always work that well when the docking port is not lined up with the vessel's center of mass, which is the case for the space station, but desperate times, they call for desperate measures, guys. And is it gonna work? Hey! Oh no, I thought it had docked. Wait for it, I've spoiled it now. Now you guys will know it works in the end. I've ruined everything once again. But yeah, it was, you can see it wasn't working. I was like, please maybe just set the power of the magnets to 200%. Magnets saved me in my time of need before. Can they save me once again? And the answer is yes. We have docked. Look at that. Beautifully executed. There are still a few more things you need to do to finish the completion of the station, such as unlocking those gravity rings and fixing the docking port that I mentioned all the way back in the build time-lapse. We've got to make sure that the cupola module's window is fully exposed and has been blocked by the decoupler. But first things first, we've got to get our Laythe Sidequest underway. So yeah, I wanted to detach the nuclear tug so that the station looks a bit cleaner. Although I suppose from a practical perspective, it probably makes more sense to leave it attached so that the station can make emergency maneuvers and in fact can move around, and there's like more fuel and there's like nuclear reactors that it can make use of. So, but it looks ugly from a gameplay point of view. By the way, for anyone who's wondering how the station is, time warped through the station, just as I can't drop out of time warp now because I'll blow the station up. But yeah, in case anyone is wondering how the station is not losing electric charge because there's no solar panels. Solar panels are a bit useless in the Jool system. Well, they're not useless, but they're very, very ineffective. So you want to kind of rely on RTGs once you're further than Duna. So Dres, Jool, Elu. Dres is a bit more forgiving, but especially Jool and Elu, you kind of want to use RTGs as your power source. So there are some RTGs inside a service bay on the space station. Here, the nuclear tug is going very noodly as we enter Laythe's atmosphere. I kind of wanted it to be destroyed so that we didn't leave any space junk anywhere. And here we are, descending through the volumetric clouds. And those volcanoes up on the land, up on the island, or was that just like a higher cloud formation? I'm not a cloudologist, so I don't know. But here we are, descending through the cloud layer. Wow, isn't that beautiful? Is that ice sheets there as well? Oh. And there goes our nuclear tug. So all the fish there are now dead. But look, there's an ice sheet there. Is that part of Parallax 2? By the way, I probably should have mentioned my ground scatter looks really nice because it's got Parallax 2. Obviously, we've got the volumetric clouds, which are part of Scatterer and Eve. Eve stands for I forgot for a second. Environmental vision enhancements. I'm trying to think if there are any other visual mods I've got installed. I don't know if I've got Planet Shine. I don't think I have got Planet Shine installed now. Because I think Planet Shine was making my atmospheres really big, which I really like the look of. But people don't stop talking about it on Twitter. They're like, oh, your atmospheres look too thick. And I'm like, I know. I like it that way. It looks cool. It makes the video more colourful. And I think it was Planet Shine that was doing that. I don't know, you guys might disagree and think that the atmospheres still look too big in this video, but I like having the big atmospheric bloom. Makes the video more colourful and the visuals pop out and, you know, maybe I'm just like got the attention span of a toddler, I don't know. But now I'm just adding some struts for rigidity for the space station. Luckily, you know, this is in KSP 2. We don't need the struts, but I just like it for the peace of mind. It just makes us a little bit less vulnerable to Kraken attacks. Now we can get the rotation of the gravity rings underway. And again, they are contra-rotating rings so that they don't end up inducing a spin on the station. The torque will cancel out. And there we are. They are spinning way too fast. There's a calculation you could do to figure out how big the ring needs to be in order for people on the ring to be experiencing 1 G of G-force. But the slowest possible speed of the motors, at least for a ring of this size, is still like 4 or 5 G. It's very high. But Kerbals, you know, they're built different. They can take it. I think, I can't remember the calculations. I did the calculations years ago for how big a gravity ring would need to be in order to have kind of 1 G in the ring. I think my I've done a MUN station with a gravity ring that has 1G in the ring itself. And it's the ring needs to be very big, basically. I didn't want this space station to be gigantic. I've called it the Nexus Station, by the way. The reason for this is because I asked ChatGPT, I still forget what it's called, the chat AI, ChatGPT. I asked it, do you have any ideas for the name of the station? And it suggested 10 names. One of them was Nexus Station, which I thought was quite... liked the sound of that. So yeah, now I'm just removing one of the science juniors from the lander, so we've got a bit more delta V in the lander, and its design also makes a bit more sense. Why would we have 2 science juniors there when we're going to be taking a scientist with us who can just refresh the science junior? And then I didn't know where to put it, so I just sort of stuck it awkwardly on the power plant. That's the power plant there. You know that piece where there's clearly a spot for crew to transfer through? That's got all the RTGs inside it. It's the nuclear power plant. And yeah, so we've now done the main part of the mission, which is, of course, establishing a big space station that we launched, that we constructed using multiple launches in orbit around Vall. But of course, part of the challenge was have the station be designed such that the Kerbals can go and do science on the surface of the moon that it's orbiting, which my interpretation means it's got to have a lander. So I put a lander here that can land on and return from the surface of Vall, and we've obviously got the orange refueling bit as well. So this can actually go down to the surface and return 6 times before we run out of fuel. And then, we can do a fairly trivial resupply mission to either refill the orange tank, potentially bring more fuel tanks as well, and even maybe like bring a bigger lander that's got mining pieces on it, so that we have a fully self-sustaining space station. So this could easily become, if you wanted to carry and do a mission like this, you could then carry it on and keep on expanding. Then you can add a surface base, maybe then you can add a rover, and then establish a little relay network around Jool so that you never have an interruption to your with communication with Kerbin. There's ways you can kind of build up a little mission like this, and that was always kind of the thing I was doing with Life on Laythe and Destination Duna. I don't know if Vall's a really cool place to visit. I don't know if it's really as an interesting enough destination to warrant a series like that, especially with KSP2 being kind of the main, I'm guessing is going to be the mainstay of this channel's output for the foreseeable future. But hey, if you want to do a mission like this, again, I showed you guys the prompt that the chat AI gave me at the beginning of this video. So if you want to do that, there are some ideas to kind of continue the mission. Because I think, it's probably not just me that gets Kerbal block from time to time and struggles to just think of a mission to do. So there are some ideas there. And of course, you can obviously just ask, ChatGPT whatever you want. I actually got a DM from Outer Space Cyberman, who's the person that made the Reddit post that inspired me to make this video. By the way, I'm going to show a little montage of me deploying all the surface science, because I love the sounds that I'm obviously talking over, which is a bit selfish of me. But yeah, they just DM'd me to say that they've been experimenting quite a bit and have now got a whole campaign running with missions solely made by ChatGPT. And if you keep it in the same chat window, it will even sometimes remember earlier missions and may use the infrastructure for it. For example, it gave them a mission to go to Duna and told them to refuel at the Mun station that it told them to build like 4 missions earlier, which is like, to me, that's really cool. So yeah, they said they've been experimenting a lot with kind of what to ask ChatGPT, and they said that this is kind of like a good prompt they use. So they kind of say, hey ChatGPT, how's it going? And then the question would be, I just started a new Kerbal Space Program campaign with a company called Jabba Industries. Our goal is to colonize the whole Kerbal system, the whole packet. Right now we have nothing and we're starting from scratch. It's a science mode playthrough with all settings on hard. I want you to act as my mission control, giving me missions and creating sort of like a dynamic campaign for my Kerbal agency. This will be a persistent chat that I will use for the campaign, so you can also build upon previous missions and so on. I also want you to give me a detailed brief of the mission, including orbit height and so on. Also, you're the mission control for my agency, so include some roleplay aspects to deliver your mission, just to help with immersion. We have a few Kerbinauts, namely Jeb, Bill, Bob, Vall, Hank, Gecko, Simon, Jabba, and Crazy. Let's go. What should the first mission be for the Jabba Industries Space Agency to get started? Perhaps a satellite network could be appropriate? Anyway, make sure to brief the mission in big detail and make it look like a professional briefing of a mission. Remember to include the details like crew size, orbit height, type, all that fuss. Let's go. And yeah, that was the entire prompt. It's a big long prompt. hopefully you guys can get a sense of kind of the extent to which you can instruct ChatGPT. And they said that was a really good way to get the campaign up and running, basically. So I don't know, I might experiment with a bit more AI stuff going forward. I think for now my plate's pretty full with KSP 2 stuff, but maybe when I start to get a bit of a slowdown of the ideas and all that, I can return to ChatGPT and see if it has any ideas for future missions. I mean, this was my first ever experience with ChatGPT. Like, I'd seen the Tom Scott video about how I just wrote code for him, and that's it, actually. I don't really have much experience. I knew what it was, but I've never used this. It was really cool, actually, using this for the first time and having a go. I'm like, oh, wow, it's actually quite clever, isn't it? But yeah, I guess what I'm saying, guys, right now is that I'm kind of struggling for things to talk about. It's been like 50 minutes. And we're just sort of messing around on the surface, and I've sort of run out of interesting anecdotes to talk about specifically with this mission. But I thought maybe we could revive an old Matt Lowne classic in this video. Let's do a whiskey review. Guys, that's right, whiskey review is back. And today I thought we could review Jack Daniel's Old No. 7, which I have reviewed before. But I thought, hey, in the spirit of today's video, let's just, because I can't really be bothered to write a whiskey review, let's just ask ChatGPT to write a whiskey review from the perspective of Matt Lowne for a YouTube video. And this is what it came up with. Hey guys, it's Matt Lowne here, and today I'm reviewing one of the most iconic whiskies in the world, Jack Daniel's Old No. 7. This Tennessee whiskey has been enjoyed by people for over a century, and it's easy to see why. First off, let's talk about the aroma. When you take a sniff of Old No. 7, you'll be met with a sweet and smoky scent that immediately gets your taste buds excited. As for the taste, well, it's just as good as the aroma promises. You'll get a smooth, smoky flavour that's balanced out by hints of caramel and vanilla. It's a well-rounded flavour that leaves you wanting more. One of the things that makes Old No. 7 stand out is its unique charcoal filtering process. This process gives the whiskey its distinct flavour profile and sets it apart from other whiskies. It's definitely worth experiencing for yourself. Now let's talk about how to enjoy Old No. 7. Personally, I like to enjoy it neat, but it also works well in cocktails. It's a versatile whiskey, and it can be enjoyed in a variety of ways. Overall, I highly recommend Jack Daniel's Old No. 7. It's a classic whiskey that's well worth trying, and it's easy to see why it's been a favourite for so many years. If you're a whiskey enthusiast, then this is one that you definitely don't want to miss. Guys, I'm going to be out of a job soon. That was like so much better than any whiskey review that I've ever written. Normally it's just like, I like this whiskey, it tastes alright, it's well priced, like it. Usually have it with my curry. 7 out of 10. And this just wrote like, I don't know if it knows who I am, because it just sort of said, hey guys, it's Matt Lowne here, and then it just wrote a generic whiskey review. But my goodness, that was I'm just old now, and new technology just scares me and I don't understand it. This is like how old people feel when they watch me make an Excel spreadsheet. This is now the same feeling, me watching, ChatGPT do all of these amazing things, and I'm like, oh, I for one am ready for the robot uprising, but hopefully ChatGPT was satisfied with the execution of this mission. There is the space station in low Vall orbit. The lander is refueled, ready to make another trip down to the surface. And of course, my patrons and channel members are now on screen. It's thanks to their generous support that I can keep making videos like this. So if you want to sign up to either of those programs and see your name in lights as well, then you can do so by clicking the links in the description or that Patreon card on screen. There are 2 other videos from my channel that YouTube thinks you'll like that are probably going to be KSP related, right? Or space news or Planet Coaster, eh? What? Anyway, I'm out of time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Goodbye.